See some folks have been joined there in the county building there. So just want to say welcome and thank you for joining GSA's public scoping meeting for the International Falls Land Port of Entry Modernization and Expansion Project Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. We'll begin the meeting here shortly. For folks that have dialed in, you'll be muted for the duration of the call until the public comment portion, where you'll have a chance to provide comments. You should see here on the screen instructions for joining your audio. If anyone's having trouble joining your audio or hearing, feel free to use the chat box, and we'll attempt to address your issues. So we'll be beginning here promptly at 6 p.m. So we'll allow a little more time for folks to join. So thank you. Seeing a few other folks have joined the call or the meeting. Just want to welcome you all to the International Falls Land Port of Entry Modernization and Expansion Project Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement public scoping meeting. We'll begin the meeting here shortly at 6 p.m. Central Time promptly. Just a note for the folks at home, your audio will be muted for the duration of the call until the public comment portion, where you'll have a chance to provide any public comments or have questions. We have instructions here on the screen for joining your audio. If you are having any technical difficulties or trouble with joining the audio connection, please feel free to communicate any issues in the chat box, and we will do our best to try to resolve them for you. And we'll be getting started here shortly. Thank you. Well, it's 6 p.m., so we will get started. So the U.S. General Services Administration, commonly known as GSA, and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, often referred to as CBP, would like to welcome you to this hybrid virtual public scoping meeting for the proposed modernization and expansion of the International Falls, Minnesota Land Port of Entry. GSA is preparing a supplemental environmental impact statement, or SEIS for short, in accordance with the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, typically abbreviated as NEPA. GSA will be the lead agency for the SEIS development, with input and expertise from CBP. Excuse me. My name is Paul DiPaolo. I'm a contractor with a firm called Potomac Hudson Engineering, or PHE, supporting GSA in the development of the International Falls Land Port of Entry Modernization and Expansion SEIS. We thank you for taking the time to participate in today's scoping meeting and welcome your comments and feedback on the proposed project. Next slide. Today's meeting will include a presentation by GSA and PHE. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format. The presentation is being provided virtually by GSA. However, GSA has provided the public the opportunity to view a broadcast of the meeting in person at the Coochin County Court Administration Building with support of local government representatives. Before we get into the details of today's meeting, there are a few housekeeping items to cover. Today's virtual meeting is hosted on the Zoom platform with an attached call-in number. In the Zoom platform, you will see a toolbar at the bottom of your screen that allows you to send a chat to the presenters. We've included a graphic on this slide that illustrates how to post in the Zoom chat box, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Please do not use this chat to submit any sort of public comment or question. There are other ways to do that, which we will discuss later. But do feel free to send us a note if you encounter any technical issues during the call, and we'll do our best to address them. Everyone will be muted until it's time to hear public comments, which will happen after some initial presentations from the project team. So at that time, we will revisit instructions for how to speak. For those viewing the broadcast in person, there is a sign-up form at the sign-in table, and the local government representative will assist you in speaking later on. As a participant, you will not be able to see the names of other participants on the call, but please know that we are recording this meeting and we'll be keeping track of who is speaking and noting all public comments for the administrative record for the project. Please note, if you would like to view closed captioning, please click Show Captions, the Show Captions button on the bottom of your screen if you are participating in the meeting virtually. A copy of this presentation is also available on the GSA website at the link posted here on the slide. This link will be posted in the chat as well. This site can be found by searching GSA Minnesota LPOE on Google and clicking on the first link. For those calling in, if you do not have computer access, please contact Michael Gonsar, GSA Region 5 NEPA Program Manager at 312-810-2326. That's 312-810-2326 during business hours after the meeting, and he will be able to provide you with a copy of the presentation. Lastly, please note this virtual public scoping meeting is being recorded and will be retained in the project administrative record. By remaining in the meeting, attendees are agreeing to being recorded. If you do not agree to this, we ask that you leave the meeting at this time. Next slide. We will be covering several topics during today's meeting, including introductions of key project staff, the purpose of this meeting, description of the two key federal laws relevant to this project, NEPA and the National Historic Preservation Act, referred to as the NHPA, and past NEPA efforts that were conducted for the project. We'll then provide a project overview, including the purpose and need for the project, as well as a brief description of the preliminary alternatives that will be analyzed in the SEIS and potentially affected environmental resources. At the end of the presentation, we'll discuss next steps and provide more information on how to submit your comments on the project to GSA, then open the floor to the public for the comment session. I'll now turn it over to Michael Gonsard, GSA Region 5 NEPA Program Manager, to introduce the project team and to go into a discussion on the NEPA process. Michael?
Great, thank you, Paul, and welcome everyone. So my name is Michael Gonzar, and I'm GSA's Region 5 NEPA Program Manager. Also presenting with me from GSA are Seth LaRoque, the Project Manager for the Land Port of Entry project, and Nikki Emery, representing GSA's Historic Preservation Officer, and finally, as Paul DiPaolo with PHE, presenting as GSA's NEPA contractor. Other GSA and CBP staff and PHE representatives are in attendance but will not be presenting today. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will provide a general understanding of the overall NEPA process and information about the project, including past NEPA activities associated with the project, the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106 process, and the next steps in the planning process. The project information given tonight will be very general, as the main purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide the public an opportunity to comment on the project. This public input will help us define the scope of issues that will be considered in the SEIS, and we encourage you to visit the project website if you'd like additional details on the project. The web link will be provided at the end of the presentation, and it's also included in the meeting handout. In carrying out our responsibilities under NEPA, GSA is committed to ensuring that we provide proper consideration to the quality of the natural and human environment. Scoping is an important opportunity for you, the public, to provide your comments on the proposed International Falls Land Port of Entry Modernization and Expansion Project, and SEIS. Scoping is a tool for identifying issues that should be addressed in the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. Scoping allows for the public to help define priorities and express stakeholder and community issues to the agency through comments. Scoping allows GSA to gather early public input on the scope of the study, potential alternatives, and any areas of concern. At the end of this presentation, we will provide you with a list of ways in which you can provide comments on the proposed project and the SEIS. Next slide, please. So what is NEPA? NEPA is the nation's legislative charter for protection of the environment and provides for the consideration of environmental issues in federal agency planning and decision-making. NEPA requires agencies to prepare a document, and in this case, a supplemental environmental impact statement, to consider whether a proposed action may significantly impact the quality of the natural and human environment. In our case, the NEPA document is a supplemental EIS. Since this project has already undergone past NEPA efforts, including the development of an EIS, or environmental impact statement, over a decade ago, which we will discuss in more detail later in this presentation. The SEIS will inform GSA decision makers and the public about the potential environmental impacts of implementing the proposed action and will be circulated for public review. NEPA does not mandate a particular decision, but it does ensure that the public is engaged in the assessment and that GSA's decisions are appropriately informed. The SEIS process allows for the public to provide input during both the project scoping period and during the draft SEIS public comment period. This input will be taken into consideration by GSA during our decision-making process and will be included as part of the project's administrative record. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to briefly go over the project's history and what NEPA efforts were conducted in the past for this project. In 2009, GSA conducted a feasibility study to evaluate the existing conditions of the International Falls Port and found that the facility did not meet minimum space requirements for land ports, and in addition to identifying other deficiencies, which resulted in the proposed improvement project for the port and triggered the need for an environmental impact statement under NEPA. Originally, 10 conceptual build alternatives were examined for the project, but during the course of the 2011 feasibility study, 5 of the 10 build alternatives were eliminated from further analysis. The draft and final EIS for the improvement project were published in 2010 and 2011, respectively. Both of these documents considered the 5 remaining conceptual build alternatives and went through the typical public review process for an EIS. GSA then issued its Record of Decision, or ROD, in 2012, which identified its preferred alternative that best satisfied the project's purpose and need and had the least impacts to the environment. Since it's been over 10 years since the release of that 2011 final EIS, there have been various changes to existing conditions at the port, in addition to various updates to program requirements of the CBP. Therefore, GSA is preparing this draft supplemental environmental impact statement to assess the potential impacts of the project updates that were not addressed in the 2011 final EIS. One note, a supplemental EIS follows all the same NEPA procedures as a regular EIS, but just focuses on the changes that have occurred from the previous analysis. As needed, information that hasn't changed may be incorporated by reference to the supplemental analysis. Next slide. So this slide provides an overview of the SEIS timeline. On December 9th, 2022, GSA published a Notice of Intent, or NOI, in the Federal Register to prepare the SEIS, and this initiated the scoping period, which will run through January 13th, 2023. As you can see, we're currently within the public scoping comment period. After the close of the scoping period and consideration of the scoping comments, GSA will conduct a detailed analysis of impacts and alternatives to the project and will prepare a draft SEIS. The draft SEIS will be available for public review and comment for 45 days, tentatively scheduled for summer of 2023. This period will also include an additional public meeting similar to this meeting today, but will include a summary of GSA's analysis and provide the public a chance to comment on GSA's findings. After the close of the comment period, GSA will consider all substantive comments in preparation of the final SEIS. The final SEIS is slated to be published in fall of 2023 and will also be available for the public to review. NEPA requires a 30-day waiting period after publication of the SEIS before an agency can complete its Record of Decision, also referred to as a ROD. So if you see on the slide, there are 3 opportunities for the public to participate and provide input during the supplemental environmental impact statement. The SEIS process ends with the issuance of the ROD. The ROD explains an agency's decision, describes the alternatives that were considered, and discusses plans for mitigation and monitoring if needed. I will now turn the presentation over to Nikki, who will discuss requirements associated with the National Historic Preservation Act, or NHPA. Nikki?
Thanks, Michael. And can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, whether you're there in person or participating virtually. And as Michael mentioned, in addition to NEPA, Compliance under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, which is referred to as NHPA or just Section 106 process for short, is being conducted concurrently. The NHPA is the most comprehensive federal law pertaining to the protection of cultural resources and establishes a program for the preservation of historic properties throughout the nation. And historic properties are those places that have significance to the history and understanding of our culture and its past. They can include historic and archaeological sites, buildings, structures, and objects, or districts with several historic resources of even multiple types. The NHPA requires federal agencies like GSA to consider the effects of their activities on historic properties. This means that GSA is required to identify historically significant cultural resources that a project might affect, and in doing so, consult with the state and tribal historic preservation offices and other interested parties who will work together to find ways to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any potential adverse effects that our undertaking might have on significant cultural resources. GSA is coordinating our Section 106 review with NEPA, and we're using the scoping process tonight and in the future to seek input from interested parties on the identification of historic properties that might be affected by the proposed project and identify any potential effect of the project on those historic properties. So if you know of historic properties that might be affected by this undertaking, you can provide this information during the comment period that begins tonight. Individuals or organizations with demonstrated interests may also request to be what is called a consulting party in the Section 106 review process. Consulting parties have a greater degree of involvement throughout the historic properties review, and requests to become a consulting party can be submitted in the same ways as the scoping process or a scoping comments process, which we'll describe later, and should detail the individual's or the organization's particular interest in a historic property. I will now turn the presentation over to Seth LaRoque, GSA's project manager, who is going to provide a project overview, discuss the purpose and need for the proposed action, and present the preliminary project alternatives that are under consideration for this SEIS. So next slide, and Seth. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. So the International Falls Land Port is situated at the foot of the International Bridge, which connects the city of International Falls with the town of Fort Frances, Ontario. It's surrounded by the Rainy River and industrial facilities associated with the Paper Corporation of America, or PCA, the owners of the paper mill, which was formerly known as Boise Ownership. The International Falls Land Port of Entry facility was built in 1993, which is almost 30 years ago now. The LPOE is operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by the Customs and Border Protection Agency, or CBP. CBP officers inspect all types of commercial and non-commercial traffic, including pedestrians at this port. The International Falls Crossing is the most heavily used in Minnesota and is currently processes more traffic than it was originally designed to accommodate. Next slide, please. The existing LPOE facility site is approximately 1.6 acres and consists of the following buildings. There's the main building, a non-commercial primary inspection, the toll booth, a non-commercial secondary inspection, a hard non-commercial secondary inspection, visitor parking, government visitor parking, commercial primary inspection, a mobile gamma ray inspection technology building, as well as a mobile gamma ray inspection truck, an outbound inspection, and storage building. And although it's not technically part of the port, there is a duty-free shop nearby shown as item F on this map. It's located adjacent to the port property. This port is crisscrossed by railroad tracks between the port and the bridge, and although rail cars actively cross the LPOE site, the rail cars no longer cross the bridge because of the closing of the Resolute paper mill just across the border in Fort Frances, Canada. Next slide. So the GSA is proposing to replace the existing port facility with a new facility, and this involves acquiring approximately 20 acres for site expansion, demolishing the existing facility, and constructing new facilities. GSA would acquire approximately 16.4 acres of land from PCA and about 4.1 acres from Recreational Land Development, LLC. Features near the project area include the Rainy River, the First Creek, PCA facilities, including the lot where they currently park their truck trailers, rail lines from the PCA facilities located south of the expansion area and across between port entry and the bridge, and the International Falls Business District, which is located a couple of blocks south of the port. The northeast corner of the district is located at the intersection of 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue, about 300 feet south of the existing port. 2nd Avenue, also referred to as US Highway 53, near the project area, provides access to and from the port. Next slide, please. The purpose of our proposed action is for GSA to support CBP's mission by bringing the International Falls LPOE operations in line with current land port design standards and operational requirements of CBP, while addressing existing deficiencies, which mainly fall into two broad categories. First, there are deficiencies in the overall site layout and substandard building conditions. And these deficiencies result in traffic congestion and safety issues for the public and workers, and inefficient building space for agencies to effectively conduct their missions. Therefore, in order to bring the International Falls LPOE operations in line with current CBP design standards and operational requirements, the proposed action is needed to improve the capacity and functionality of the International Falls LPOE to meet future demand while maintaining the capability to meet broader security initiatives. Also, to address spatial and layout constraints that lead to traffic congestion and safety issues for the employees and users of the LPOE. And finally, to provide adequate space for facilities for federal agencies to accomplish their missions. Next slide. And as we mentioned earlier, GSA released a final EIS in 2011, but since then there have been numerous changes to the project, including changes in tenant and use of space. For example, U.S. Department of Agriculture or USDA, Animal Plant Health Inspection Services, Plant Protection and Quarantine, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are planning to be part of the LPOE. Also, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, who was previously going to occupy space in the port, is no longer planning to be part of this LPOE. There's also been change in space requirements. The space and facility requirements for CBP operations, also referred to as their program requirements, has changed since 2011, resulting in a need to update the project to reflect the latest CBP needs at this port. Additionally, the new tenants, USDA and Fish and Wildlife Service, have space requirements to fulfill. Therefore, there's been an increase in overall building space needed at this port based on updated program requirements for CBP and other federal agents, which includes the addition of a maintenance building. Additional parking is also required. There's also been a change in the paper mill ownership. So PCA has acquired Boise Incorporated and has new requirements and operations, which require changes to the original LPOE site plan. Key changes to PCA's requirements include moving the proposed trailer parking further east from the proposed 2011 location and modifications to the layout configuration that would provide enough space for PCA's maintenance and service activities. There's also been the closure of the Resolute paper mill. The paper mill located at Fort Francis, Ontario, closed in 2017, which has decreased rail traffic and processing at the airport, or at the port. There's also been changes in the First Creek culvert. So there's a section of the First Creek between SR 11 and the Rainy River, which was previously contained in a culvert, which is discovered to be removed and is now daylighted, which requires an impact analysis. And lastly, there's been changes in stormwater management. Stormwater management would be redesigned in the 300-foot section of First Creek due to new areas of pavement crossing First Creek. Therefore, the SEIS will provide a re-examination of potential impacts based on these updates, including coordination efforts with the SHPO and under the Section 106 NHPA requirements. Next slide, please. The majority of the new facilities will be constructed within a newly acquired 20-acre expansion area. The proposed improvements include a new main building, 5 primary passenger vehicle lanes, 10 secondary passenger vehicle lanes, 1 bus lane, 1 primary commercial vehicle lane, a commercial building, 1 passenger vehicle bay, 2 commercial bays, a kennel, storage building, parking facilities, and an indoor firing range. Next slide, please. This figure is a conceptual representation of the SEIS's project site layout. As we stated earlier, the majority of the improvements and operations would be moved to this 20-acre expansion area, and this expansion area is located in an east-west alignment along the Rainy River and north of State Road 11. Note that the project updates would fit within the footprint that was analyzed as the preferred alternative in the 2011 final EIS. The primary differences are the size and location of the buildings and the traffic flow configuration. Next slide. GSA has preliminarily identified 1 action alternative to analyze in the SEIS, Alternative 1, which is to construct the facilities as described under the preferred alternative as identified in the 2011 final EIS and as modified by the project updates discussed earlier. Alternative 1 is similar to the 2011 final EIS preferred alternative in that it includes demolition of the existing facility, expansion of the port, which involves acquisition of land and construction of new facilities. GSA would consider a no-action alternative in accordance with CEQ regulations in which GSA would not move forward with the proposed action. I'll now turn over the presentation back to Paul DiPaolo for discussion of the resources that will be studied in this SEIS. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Seth. So as part of the SEIS process, we will analyze environmental resources within the project area, which includes providing a description of the affected environment, or also known as the existing conditions, for each resource, as well as analyzing potential impacts of the project activities on those resources. As part of the initial efforts to conduct the analysis for the SEIS, we will be re-examining what resources or conditions have changed since the 2011 final EIS and determine which analyses originally conducted in the past warrant new or further analysis based on the latest project updates. Our draft SEIS here will incorporate by reference information and analysis contained in that 2011 analysis, and will focus on new information related to the changes in the project development and site conditions as outlined previously by Seth. GSA has preliminarily identified the following environmental resources listed on this slide as being potentially affected by project activities. This includes geology and soils, water resources, biological resources, air quality and climate change, noise, traffic and transportation, land use and visual resources, cultural resources, utilities, human health and safety, socioeconomics, and environmental justice. GSA will carefully consider potential impacts on each resource in a quantitative and/or qualitative manner as applicable. GSA will also develop mitigations for resource impacts if needed. As Michael mentioned earlier, GSA invites the public to provide input on specific resource concerns, so these concerns can be considered in the SEIS development. Next slide. So as outlined earlier regarding the SEIS schedule, we are in the early stages of the NEPA process for this SEIS. The last day to submit a scoping comment to GSA is January 13th of next year, which is about a month away. We will be considering all scoping comments received when developing the draft EIS. Once GSA announces the availability of the draft SEIS, this will kick off a public comment period on that document, and GSA will also hold a public meeting to go over the draft SEIS and provide the public an opportunity to comment on GSA's analysis. The comment period for the draft SEIS is tentatively scheduled for next summer. The project website included here will have project updates posted as they unfold. I don't know if there's anyone dialing in, but this website can easily be searched on the web by Googling GSA Minnesota LPOE. Next slide. So As mentioned, the public scoping period provides you with the opportunity to comment on the proposed project, including any potential alternatives, information, concerns, and analyses relevant to the proposed action. As mentioned previously, you can also use this time to request to be a consulting party for historic resources consultation as part of the Section 106 process. There are a few ways for you to submit your comments. To provide any written comments, you may mail or email them to GSA at the addresses listed on this slide. The addresses are, this address is also provided in the meeting handout. We ask that you include in the subject line, International Falls, LPOE, SEIS. Written comments must be postmarked by January 13th, 2023 to be accepted. For those dialing in, you can email them to michael.gonsar@gsa.gov. That's michael.gonczar@gsa.gov. And the mailing address is, attention, Michael Gonsar, International Falls, LPOE, SEIS, U.S. General Services Administration, Region 5, 230 South Dearborn Street, Suite 3600, Chicago, Illinois, 60604. For those that attended in person at the courthouse, you may fill out a comment form provided by GSA and submit to the local government representative on site. Another way is to submit your comments tonight via the Zoom Q&A feature or verbally during the commenting session, which we will provide instructions on the next slide. This wraps up GSA's presentation for the SEIS, and we will now begin the public commenting session. Next slide. So before we begin the commenting session, I'd like to go over some basic commenting etiquette we would like to ask you to abide by. Before you speak, please say and spell your first and last name and indicate any affiliation if you have one at the start of your comment. Please be respectful of participants and presenters, and please refrain from use of crass or vulgar language or directing comments towards a single person or group. As previously noted, GSA will not be responding to technical questions during today's virtual scoping meeting, but will consider them in preparation of the draft SEIS. GSA will clarify anything presented in this presentation relating to the project, the NEPA process, or opportunities for public participation. To make sure as many commenters as possible get the chance to speak today, we are limiting each person's comments to 3 minutes. There will be a countdown timer you can see on the next slide that will show you how much time you have left during your 3-minute period. So please be respectful of people's time and wrap up your comments when prompted. Sorry, I lost my place here. Apologies. If you go over your allotted time, we may need to cut the microphone just to ensure there's adequate time for everyone to speak. If you're on the phone and you can't see the screen we're sharing, we'll give you a 30-second verbal warning, but you may want to keep your own timer just so you aren't surprised by the time limit. Additional comments, as mentioned, can be submitted in writing. We'd like everyone who wants to speak to have the time to have the opportunity to speak at least once, but if time allows, we'll certainly allow participants who have already commented to speak again after all commenters have an initial opportunity to speak. A recording of the meeting will be made and your comments will be included in the administrative record. Next slide. So we will now be calling on people to provide public comments if they desire. And as you can see, the timer here is on the slide that will indicate the time to provide your comment. So commenters who've signed up in person at the Cushing County Court Administration Building will be asked to speak first if they would like, and then we will move on to those who are participating virtually. For those in person at the County Administration Building, if you wish to speak and have not signed up already, please do so now at the sign-in table, and then you will please wait to be called up by myself. If you are attending virtually using the Zoom platform, you can raise your hand to speak by clicking the button that says raise hand and looks like a hand. If you're joining by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Please only raise your hand or press *9 one time. Doing either of these multiple times will cause you to lower your hand and lose your place in the queue. We're going to maintain a live queue here on the slide of the next three commenters, just so you can know who's up next to speak. We'll call on folks by their name, or if they're dialing in by the last four digits of their phone number when it is their turn to speak, and then send a request for those virtually to unmute yourself. For those in person, the government representative will assist you in unmuting the laptop. For those virtual, you'll see a window pop up with a button that lets you unmute yourself. Or if you're on the phone, you'll hear an automated voice prompting you to unmute by pressing *6. Again, please first introduce yourself and spell your first and last name for us and indicate any affiliation you may have. Once you're done spelling your name, your 3 minutes will begin. Please speak slowly and clearly. As mentioned before, the meeting is being recorded and we want to make sure we capture everything that you're saying. When you're done speaking, please mute yourself by clicking the mute button and pressing pressing *6 on your phone. I know this was maybe a lot to digest, so we'll be helping folks mute on our end as we move on to the next commenter. If there's anyone participating that would like to provide a written comment that does not wish to speak, you may also do so using the Zoom app by clicking on the Q&A icon, typing your question, and clicking send. GSA will read your comment aloud and acknowledge them in the order they are received. And just as a reminder, please do not use the chat box to offer any written scoping comments. Please use the Q&A feature. And again, the meeting is being recorded and all comments will be included in the project record. So with that said, Justin, has there been anyone in person that has requested to sign up to speak?
Hey, Paul. Nobody's signed up, but if anybody would like to, I can hand them the microphone. All right. It doesn't look like we have any comments or questions over here, Paul.
Okay, great. So I will turn it over to anyone participating virtually if they have any questions or comments that they would like to provide to GSA at this time. Encourage you to use the raise your hand feature to get yourself in line to speak. We've not received any requests yet, so we'll just give folks a few more minutes in case anyone else has a question that pops in their mind. It does look like we had commenters submit a comment through the Q&A feature. So I will just read this aloud here. Commenter requested that we consider the safety and convenience concerns for the pedestrian crossings in our proposals. Also consider the traffic safety, especially when summer lines are at the border. Thank you for your comment, and we will certainly consider this in the development of the draft SEIS.
Hey, Paul, we got somebody with a question over here.
Okay, please feel free to speak when you're ready. You can just announce your first and last name.
It's Mike Kruger, K-R-U-E-G-E-R. I work for the company that owns the bridge and the toll booth, Ajagon. And I was wondering, we have several oversized loads that come through our port of entries on both sides. I was kind of wondering if you plan for that. Some of those loads are 200 feet long, 16 and a half feet high, 16 and a half feet wide. So I was just kind of wondering what you have proposed for your new facility and during the construction, how we're going to get those loads through.
Seth, would you maybe be able to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer directly today, but it's definitely something we will consider as we're putting together the scope of the project. So we appreciate that feedback. Thank you very much.
Hey, Paul, a few of the attendees are mentioning handouts that you referenced, but I don't know if you sent those over and I missed them or...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I emailed those to you before the meeting. I'm sorry, yeah, apologies for that. So if you aren't able to print them out, they are available on the website, the GSA website. If you Google GSA Minnesota LPOE, there's International Falls, take you to the International Falls page, and there is a handout on there. I'm not sure if apologies, I don't know, probably just didn't see the email, but if you're able to potentially print those out before.
Yeah, I can go do that right now. I can be back in a few minutes.
Okay, great. We'll give it a few more minutes here. If anyone has any other final last minute questions, we'll leave the meeting open for a few more minutes. Again, if folks leave here tonight and they have additional comments that they think of or questions they would like to ask, for those attending in person, the handout that Justin will be printing here for you all will have the contact information for Michael and GSA to provide a comment or question, and that we'll provide in the chat here a link to the GSA website, which also includes that information. And you will have until January 13th to provide any further questions or comments.
And I'd also like to just add that we'll be having we'll be uploading this video on GSA's LPOE website as well for you to reference and watch or share as you'd like. And we're posting in the Rainy Lake Gazette, I believe next week, right, Paul, with a link to that as well.
Correct, on Friday.
Good. Thank you.
It does look like we received a question through the Q&A from Jason McBride. States the proposed traffic for non-commercial vehicles will still enter and exit from 2nd Avenue / Highway 53, and that route will not change. I can repeat that. Seth, you might be best.
Yeah, I can answer that as well. So we do understand, like when this was first done in 2011, there was a lot of attention to that specific issue, and it was highlighted as a major concern for the local community. So we do recognize that it is important. The traffic patterns need to remain, as you stated in the question. So that is a focus of our design intent.
While we're waiting for any additional questions, I just want to thank the county for allowing us to present in such a beautiful space. I only see one wall, but it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for hosting us this evening.
We do have a question.
Okay, great. The commenter can state their name.
This is Matt Gwynn. I'm a resident of International Falls. I also work for the county, but this is just a personal comment. My last name G-O-U-I-N.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? G-O-U-I-N. Okay, great. Thank you.
And so my comment would be in the International Falls Comprehensive Plan, there's a section that talks about a new international bridge. And I just want to make sure that whatever plans you are developing here, that there's a section in your plans that deals with that. And may help the city, get that bridge.
So I think I can answer that. So we have heard some of that at the project site. We certainly would be open to any kind of further discussions about that. Obviously, our intent is to work with the city and the master plans moving forward. So if there are any further details, we want to make sure we do incorporate that as we're developing the scope of the project. Yeah, so that is our intent to, if there is anything along the lines of a new bridge, we do want to, have more information on that as it becomes available.
So all you need to do is go to the International Falls City website and look up their comprehensive plan. And in the comprehensive plan, there's a section or a page that deals with, one of their goals would be to build a new international bridge.
Perfect. Okay, we really appreciate that feedback, so we'll check that out.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that's all from us here, Paul. Everybody has now left.
Great.
Justin, thank you so much for your help there. You've been really, really helpful on this, so we owe you big time.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. And I'll get the attendees list scanned and sent over to you guys as well, probably tomorrow morning.
You're the best.
Great. Really appreciate that.
Were you able to share the handout with the folks at the courthouse?
Yeah, I got it printed out and up here. The few that were still up here by the time I got back, got a copy.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep, of course. Any need to stick on the meeting, or can we shut things down here?
I think we should be all set, right? Oh.
Yeah, I think if there's no one else there, you know, we'll leave the virtual meeting open here for a few more minutes in case anyone attending virtually would like to raise their hand. But I think, yeah, I think for the in-person portion, Justin, we can close that down if there's no one else there.
Okay, sounds good, guys. You guys have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. You do the same.
You too.
We can leave it up for a couple more minutes, and I guess if we don't receive any more comments, then we can go ahead and wrap things up. So we'll give it to about 6:55 local time, and at that point, if we don't receive any more comments or raised hands, we will go ahead and close the meeting. Again, just as a reminder, there will be opportunities to provide comments throughout the remainder of the scoping period. At the information provided in the link that was included in the chat earlier. It looks like it's about 6:55, and we haven't received any comments to the Q&A or any raised hands. So with that, I think unless there's any objection or last minute requests, Michael, shall we go ahead and close the meeting? You might be muted.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I'm good to adjourn. Thank you, Paul.
Great.
And thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for everyone for attending. As mentioned, the link in the chat has a link to additional information providing public comment. And we appreciate everyone's attendance here tonight, and look forward to any further comments that are received. So thank you for everyone for your time.